Hello there, Geeks and Gamers. I'm MarcTheCyborg, and this is my English friend, this side, English friend, Disparu, and we're here to talk to you about a little game called Deathloop. Disparu, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I've been enjoying Deathloop. I think it's a great core experience of the game. It's just, there's some things in about it. It's the peripheral edges that I'm not happy with, but I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Yeah, I have some issues with it myself. Overall, I'd say it's honestly one of the best games I've played this year. At the same time, it's sort of the same thing, or actually a much less severe version of what I felt about The Last of Us 2, where you see those 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 scores, and you're just like, are you guys kidding? This game I think is very, very good, and I think that where it really tops games like The Last of Us especially is it's very unique and very interesting in the sense that there's a lot of new ideas going on. At the same time, some remixes of old ideas that Arkane's done, in particular with the Dishonored series. In fact, I think this game has a lot in common with Dishonored from a moment-to-moment gameplay standpoint. But for those of you who aren't really aware what Deathloop is the newest game by Arkane Lyon Studios, who are the same studio that made the Dishonored games. They assisted on Wolfenstein Youngblood, and I'm assuming they probably assisted on Prey as well, though Prey was made by Arkane Austin. So it's the same banner of the company, but a different studio that was actually making it. And in Deathloop, you play as a character named Colt, who is in a Groundhog Day or like Edge of Tomorrow type situation where he keeps on reliving the same day. And at least in the loop where we start playing, he's starting to remember things from moment to moment, or day to day, I guess. But at the same time, we are given the impression that this may have been going on for quite a while, and we're introduced to it by his rival, Juliana, who is not only the antagonist of the game, or at least one of the antagonists of the game, but the character who you play as if you choose to play the multiplayer component. So we won't go into the multiplayer stuff just yet, because that's a whole other bag of worms, but Disparu, what do you think about the game, just at a general level?
The core experience is great. Stuff like the actual shooting, the base idea of the way it's set up, and kind of the story as it's progressed so far is all stuff I really like. It's a really fun experience. It's just the peripheral edges, things like the AI, how it can get a bit repetitive, and stuff like that. It's the peripheral issues. It's why you can't give it 10 out of 10. It's not a perfect game. It's not even close. It's fun, but I keep running into sort of brick walls, which take me out of it. And I just... The kind of things that could be fixed in a sequel that could be, like, a really great game. But for now, I do think they keep pulling me out of the experience. And things like crashes in a game where it resets your entire thing and you can't save. You can't have an unstable game. It's not possible for you to release that way. So I think they may have had a few priorities messed up along the way.
Yeah, and this is probably where the PS5 gamers are going to be like, that's what you get, you PC elitists, because they're going to be like, the PlayStation 5 version worked perfectly. I have gotten 2 crashes as I've been playing. One time I did lose some pretty decent stuff, so it was a bit of a piss off, but overall I didn't find it experience ruining for the most part. I had a similar issue, actually, speaking of PS5 exclusives, with Returnal, and that game is far less forgiving about its permadeath system than Deathloop is. Deathloop is honestly, it's not all that difficult for a game that is kind of being billed as this, like, oh, it's a super hard game where if you die, you're totally dead and you have to restart the entire game. Once you get to a certain point in the game and you unlock what's essentially the main loop, you can collect this currency called Residuum that you can then use in order to essentially spend it on items, be it your power slabs or your weapons or perks, because you have little, what are they called again? The trinkets, the trinkets that you're given that basically give you perks on either your weapons or your character. you can spend a certain amount of residuum on those to have them carry over between loops. Now, if you lose them during the day, so say you can only carry 2 powers at a time, so if you find a new power and you pick it up in the morning, the power that you dropped is gone for the rest of the day. But if you die or if the day ends, you get that power back if you spent the residuum to save it. So I was really, really upset when I thought I had lost my fully upgraded shift power. And the shift power, if anyone here has played Dishonored, it's the blink from Dishonored. It's just they call it shift. It's basically your teleportation. And I got one that was fully leveled up. It was really awesome. And I left it somewhere and then found out that I didn't just have it in my inventory when the next segment of the day started, and was basically like, oh, fuck this game, man, this sucks. But then I died in another segment and then rebooted, and I was like, oh, I have my shift back, nice. So that was a complaint I thought I was going to have that I don't. But there's systems like that make it much more forgiving than something like Returnal, where there's basically a campaign and a B campaign in Returnal, and once you die, you start at the beginning of that campaign, no matter what. Full stop, you lose absolutely everything except for accrued weapon upgrades, but because the weapons you pick up in that game are random, you never know if you're going to be able to have that weapon to use that upgrade. Whereas in Deathloop, if you find a gun you really like I have this shotgun, which has this kind of... It's got like a drum magazine, and it has kind of red on the top and white in the middle, so it almost looks like teeth. And this thing is honestly overpowered. I think I might need to stop using it because it is maybe making the game a little bit easier. I put a trinket on it that makes it do damage from longer distances than it should be able to. And it has a mag of 20 shells. So I've got a shotgun that has 20 shells in it that I can kill you from 100 meters away. And that's been making the PvP interesting. But
when I was reading people's thoughts about the PvP, a lot of the comments that I heard was because they're matching so quickly compared to the people that are loading in, Juliana, I forgot her name.
Juliana,
yeah. She's waiting outside the spawns because they know where you're going to come out of, and they've all just got that shotgun, and the moment you walk out, you're dead.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah. I have had a fair amount of experiences in the PvP where I was just like, oh man, this guy's just got my number. I've no chance. Or girl, whoever was controlling Juliana. I get the character was a girl. But I find that I'm killing Juliana much more than she's killing me. And I guess this is probably a good time to talk about the PvP. I think the PvP in this game is structured in a way that makes it incredibly interesting. I think that while I think that GameSpot and IGN and the mainstream outlets are overrating this game by calling it a 10 out of 10, I think that this feature it's not totally unique because it's basically just invasions from the From Software games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where you can invade a person's single player game and then basically become a problem for them, and then all of a sudden they have to kill a human player while they thought they were just dealing with AI. It is the same sort of deal, but there are structural elements for the way it's done in Deathloop that make it much less frustrating. And the biggest one, the most obvious one, which is actually very simple, is Colt has 3 lives in any given area. So you have 2 resets, essentially. So you die, it rewinds you back 25 meters wherever you were, a couple steps, basically 30 seconds of time or so. And then you have full health, and you basically just have a whole other life. Juliana, though, does not have that ability. So if you, as Juliana, invade another player, you have to kill that other player 3 times in order to have a victory, whereas they only have to kill you once. And that's a little thing, and it's not anything that's dependent on, this is something that you can only do on the next-gen consoles or a high-end PC. No, it's a game design thing. It's just a decision. But that decision makes it so that when I get invaded by Juliana, when I'm playing the single-player campaign, I'm not really that pissed off, because I know that I just have to kill her 1 time, and she has to kill me 3 times, and if I kill her, I get about 15,000 residuum, which is a fair amount. I'll get a power or a power upgrade if I already have that power, and usually a pretty solid weapon. So when Juliana invades your game, there is an element of, if I get a player that's not that good, or at least that I'm better than, or if I just get the drop on this guy, then I'm going to get some really awesome rewards. And I think that really makes it interesting. And I think that from a narrative perspective, the interplay between Colt and Juliana is kind of playful and friendly. It's like they sort of know that they're in kind of a game, and that she seems to be kind of messing with him more than he's messing with her. But even when you have your end match screens at the end of it, if you're Colton and you win, you'll do things like kind of go up to the Juliana model and like try to give her props, and then she'll go in for the props and he does like one of these, and I don't know, there's things like that make it not only in the presentation of the narrative in that sense, but in the gameplay itself, where when someone invades you, instead of, oh man, like, damn it, like this guy's gonna kill me and I'm gonna lose all this progress, it's kind of just like, okay, Juliana, here we go, let's fight. And I think that's really cool, and I think that it keeps PvP and campaign tied in a way that some other games have tried to do it, but I think in Deathloop it's much more successful. Now, you were saying you didn't have a lot of experience with the PvP. Have you tried playing as Juliana at all?
No, like I said, it's not really something, like I bought this for the single player game. I watched the trailer, I saw from that perspective, they didn't really even show anything about the PvP and the invasions. I'm not really sure why. But from that, I like to keep single-player stuff different from multiplayer, because I'm like way more competitive in multiplayer stuff. So if it was that, then, you know, I'd start trying to go for FPS over graphics and everything else. So if I'm playing a single-player game, I do focus more on the visuals over the FPS. I'm just not that competitive. So I'm in a different mindset. And for someone coming in, I know they've got 3 lives and everything else, but even so, I kind of go into a map with an objective in mind, and that's what I want to accomplish. And just some other person, it feels like almost someone in real life coming over my shoulder and going, do you want to do this now? Do you want to do that? No, I want to play the game that I'm playing. So for me, it seems like a bit of interference. And I've heard that I'm probably not alone in this kind of idea, because the queue times for Juliana are astronomical. They're like 5 to 10 minutes each from what I've heard. And I think that just shows that a lot of players are either turning it off, or there's an incredible imbalance between people that want to invade and people who want to be invaded. So, although, despite how good it may be if you're into this kind of thing, I'm not sure that they've got the balance right and how often you should do it. Maybe even do something like you have to either reach a certain point in the level, or for every so many people you kill, you get tokens to go and invade someone else, rather than it just being able to have an infinite queue. It might balance the sides up a lot more, because I do think queue times are a big issue for people who want to do it.
Yeah, I guess I can't really speak to that, because I was just, when I was playing as Juliana, I was just invading my buddy Sergio. I actually think it's really kind of neat that you can invade people on your friends list, so you can decide who you want to invade, or just decide to do a random queue where you just kind of invade anyone. The one thing that they did kind of balance it out, at least as far as the matchmaking goes, is you can only invade someone who is in an area at a time of day that has a visionary. So if it is just someone that's like, I just want to knock out this side quest or explore the area a bit, I don't really want to be bothered, I want to get some of the notes, because, well, I'll go into the structure of the campaign, which I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest, but it's a lot of finding notes. But anyways, so if you are just trying to pick up a side objective, you don't really have to worry about being invaded, because they can only invade you if you're in like a main mission. That being said, maybe that wasn't the right call, because I think it's probably more when people are in a main mission that they're going to be more concerned about someone killing them while they're in the middle of something pretty serious. But I think what the funniest thing for me anytime I've ever been invaded is when the Juliana like spawns or something kind of close to where I already am, and I just like one-shot her, and it's like, yeah, that's what you get for invading me. I'll take that power and that weapon, thank you.
Did you suffer any kind of lag when in the fights? Because that was another complaint I've read a lot of, was just like teleporting Julianas and stuff, or there were like trading kills, or there was even one guy that said basically the solution is you just run them and melee them, because the lag's so bad it's very difficult to even fight them. And I don't know whether that's a console or PC thing, but
I did melee kill a Juliana once, but the teleporting Juliana thing, that's kind of hard to judge, because you can have the shift ability as Juliana. So teleporting Juliana might be, because I'm teleporting as Juliana. That's not lag, that's just my ability.
The way they described it is that those kind of abilities like kind of multiply any lag effect, because it's already difficult to track them as it is. Once you start getting netcode issues and everything as well, then they're sort of unbeatable. They kind of describe them as everything multiplied on each other and just made it so hard to track that you kind of just could rush them, and you have 3 lives, so you're gonna melee them eventually anyway. So
well, see, the thing is though, every time you die, you get teleported back, so you can't really just kind of keep. You can't bulldoze through your lives because you don't even know how far back you're going to be moved. So, but what's actually kind of interesting too is then if you're in the middle of an encounter with Juliana, you get killed and you lose one of your lives, you can kind of come at her from a different angle because you know roughly where she is, where she might not exactly know where you just got moved to. Unless she was tracking you for a while and knew where you were coming from. But at that point, you're dealing with a person who clearly understands the mechanics of the game deeply and is like tracking you and being like, okay, I see him and I could kill him once now, but I want to make sure I know exactly where he's been for the last 10 steps or something like that. If
they're playing with their food that much, you're already dead. You might as well move on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I guess here we'll talk about the narrative structure that we kind of touched on there. So I find it confusing, but as I push further into it, I'm sort of getting a better sense of exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and how I can actually make the game progress, like from a functional standpoint. Because the thing about your goal as Colton is just to break the loop. That's the only thing that you know you're there to do, and how to do it is the tricky part, because there's 4 times of day and 4 areas, but there's, I want to say 7. It might be 7 or 8. I'm not sure. I probably should have looked up exactly how many visionaries there are. I probably could go. Is it 8? Yeah, that would make some sense. But the point is, you cannot in one day go to where all the visionaries are. So what you have to start doing is tackling the side missions, and which all the side missions, if not most of them, usually involve you going to a certain place at a certain time and doing something like opening a door or picking up a phone or looking at a note and then gaining information. Now, the one thing that makes it a bit more user-friendly than just you need to figure out this mystery and put it all together as the player, and it's going to be randomized for everyone, so you've got to just, be taking notes in the real world and trying to put together this mystery. It's nothing like that. It's more just, once you have the information, Colt knows the information, so you don't have to worry about it. It's like, okay, now this objective is this, so every time you go to this door, the code will automatically enter itself. You don't have to actually remember it. And I find that now you're finding things like, oh, this person is now going to be invited to this party. So that party where you killed the guy with the wolf mask, like the furry dude, now there's going to be 2 of the visionaries at that party. And I think the idea is that you got to try to find enough clues and perform enough objectives to manipulate the day so that multiple visionaries end up in the same place at the same time, so that you can kill 2 at once at least. Because I guess if there's 8 and you have 4 times a day, you'd have to kill 2 per time of day. And yes. And ideally, if you want, or not ideally, the goal is to just kill all 8 of them, and then that should end the game. I haven't finished the game, so I can't really say for sure. For all I know, that's when the real game begins. But I'm going to assume that it's not, and it's just once you kill all 8 of them, that's that. But yeah, so I don't know. You were saying that you weren't too crazy about this structure, though, right?
It's not so much the structure itself. I can get my head around the actual structure of it. It's the UI of how it's all laid out with all the different... It's clearly designed for a console to use the buttons to go through and everything else with the tabs at the top, then everything listed and but it's just so unwieldy to me that my brain just looks at it and goes, nah, I can't be bothered. And I just start following whatever the next icon is on the list, and I just do it that way. And I think it's been designed so if you don't care about it, you don't really have to care about it. But it's not set up in a way that makes me want to kind of dive in and choose specific things and come up with a list. Like, I'm sure I could go through the maps far more efficiently if I did that, but as it is, it tends to just give you what it thinks you should do next, and that's what I've been following. And I don't know, it's part of the problem that I want to go in there and shoot things and go through the actual game and everything, and I find myself just staring at every single table, every single wall, just looking for a note, because if you don't find that note, you're not going to find something that you need. And so the side quests are basically main quests, because if you don't find that thing, you're not going to set up this thing which leads the guy to move into the next corridor. Now, maybe it would tell me to do that, like, objectively, eventually, if I got stuck. But as it is, I don't play a game to go around looking on every single desk for a note. It's just, I want to shoot people, you know? That's kind of what I thought I was getting into. So I kind of think there was better ways to do this, whether it be through NPCs talking as you went into a room, so you know, to enter an area rather than specifically look at this table. But overall as well, it's sort of, when I'm doing that kind of thing, there's things that pull me out of it. Like, you're supposed to be going really in depth, looking for all the things, putting all these clues together. So it's trying to make it seem complicated. And then you run into the AI and they'll just walk through a door repeatedly as you machete them. And it tries to make itself feel like a really intelligent game, but doesn't put that amount of effort into all of the game. And so I don't know. I think if they really wanted to come across as this really complex and deep game, they should have made the AI impressive as well in that. Because I think most of the times I've died, it's literally just been, you get overwhelmed by stupid enemies as you're reloading. I never really feel like I've died because, oh, that guy was really smart and he beat me there.
I think the interesting thing about the way this game is structured versus Dishonored in particular is that this game presents itself in a way that seems like it might be an immersive sim game, like something more like System Shock or BioShock or Prey. And it's kind of not. It is just a shoot 'em up game more so. But what at least for me personally is interesting, and I do mean that very subjectively, is I think that in doing so, it did kind of strip away some of the things that have put me off Arkane's games in the past, because I played Dishonored 1 and I liked it quite a lot. I did a not a total pacifist run, but I made it so that all of the main targets, I used the peaceful takedowns for them and then got the good ending. And I think that by the time Dishonored 2 came out, I just didn't really want to deal with that, because it was really hard to have essentially perfect stealth and to constantly be reloading checkpoints because you got spotted and then couldn't get out of it without killing people. Whereas I think one thing that's neat about Deathloop is it doesn't even try to have a morality system. It's just like, no, these are all basically mannequins, and a lot of them, they all kind of look like mannequins too. And you can murder them all. And the death animations are really cool. There's lots of like very chunky blood coming out of everything, and just have a good time. So I think that it has this interesting middle ground between being an immersive sim, to the point that I actually took my buddy's advice and turned off all the waypoint markers at first, until I started realizing that it's sort of not the kind of game where turning off the waypoint markers really do like immerse you more. And I was starting to kind of wonder where I should be going at any given time for things like the objectives, because those objectives for things like find this note or turn on this power supply thing to get the firework machine blowing up in the day, or whatever the thing ends up being, having the objective markers on really helps a lot. And especially when you get invaded by Juliana, even if you kill her, you have to hack this radio tower thing in order to leave the level at all. And if you don't have an objective marker on for that, it's really tough to find even where the thing's going to be. Speaking of which, I guess a little side note, the hacker machine that you have is called the Hack-a-majig, and I love that. It's a great little device. If you turn on the range extender perk too, you can basically hack sentry turrets from like halfway across the map, and then they start just killing everyone they're near. It's pretty sweet. But yeah, I think though overall, I do. It's jiving with me, the tone that they decided to, or I guess the position they decided to take when it comes to, is this an action shooter or is this an immersive sim? It's just enough immersive sim that I kind of feel like I can be sneaky and creative about approaching things, but ultimately I'm spending most of my time just killing people with really awesome powers. And I think that if they did try to make it more of an immersive sim and made it so that, oh no, you can do this totally no kill, like more like Dishonored, then the stealth AI in particular would really be a problem, because it's not good enough to be like, oh, these enemies are crafty enough that this is a good stealth game on its own. It really is. These enemies are dumb as posts. And if you want to stealth kill them, you can probably stealth kill as many of them as you can possibly get killed before one of them sees you directly in their line of sight, because if you're even slightly to the side of someone, you're invisible to them. And the difficulty comes with, as you were saying before, it's when you get overwhelmed and you're dealing with a crowd of people. Though I have a really sweet perk for it. Do you have the Nexus ability?
Is that the invisibility one?
No, the Nexus, that's Ether. Nexus is the one where you have to throw it at two people, and then when you kill one of them, both of them die.
I do have that, I've just not used it. I found invisibility to be too awesome.
All right, okay. So listen to this. So when you get an upgrade for the Nexus perk, it will automatically put Nexus tethers on everyone that's close to that person. So if I come across a room full of people or a big crowd, I can throw the Nexus at one person, and then all of a sudden I see this spider web of like little laser beams connecting like 10 people, and then one headshot just kills them all. It's amazing.
That's insanely overpowered, because when they chase you, they all just run down a corridor and group up anyway, so you're kind of immortal at that point.
Yeah, it's really broken, and it's wonderful. Like, it is the kind of thing that this game has quite a few things that you can really break the game with and turn it into a full-on power fantasy, but I think that the fact that you can't do mid-level checkpoints, or you can't save anywhere to then experiment with the immersive sim stuff a little bit more, because you know that any moment if you die, that's it, your whole day's starting over again. Having it be so that like, no, but there's things that once you get to the point that you have those, you can experiment, and then if the whole level starts chasing after you, you've got some options. But yeah.
That's the thing. When I was going into maps, there were times when I would just be like, sometimes I'd just go for the objective and get out, and others I'd crawl the entire map going through everything. And that's when I had one of the crashes, which is why it really annoyed me. I'd gone through the entire level, never been in before, killed one of the bosses, got all his stuff, was going out and crashed. So after that, I was like, I'm just going to do this.
That's a shame.
I do think this game would be much better if it was just open world. The maps could be the same, but just connect them all. Even if it's through, like, there's a tunnel which is a loading screen that you don't know about. I think that would help a lot with the sort of the repetitiveness. Because even now I'm getting a bit where it's like, do I have to go back there again just to do one thing and then get out again? So I think it can, if it was open world and I could just move from area to area without going through loading screens, I think it would reduce that kind of repetitiveness kind of feeling.
I think, though, the problem with that is it would make it a lot more difficult to structure the whole, these are the areas, these are the time of days.
I'd have it based on a clock.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It would then become... well, see, that I sort of wonder if it would be more stressful for exploration if you knew that you were limited to specific areas, or if you were on a ticking time clock. Because one thing I kind of like about the way it's structured here, where it's just like daytime, and you could be in this daytime area for 48 real-time hours if you want. As long as you don't leave, it's not going to advance the time of day. And I think that does give you the freedom to explore and search every table and every bookcase for different notes and things like that can give you clues to the overall mystery.
Yeah, I think it's because if you do like exploring everything with things off, I can see that. But I am more of a person that I wouldn't have been interested in stealth. I had no intention of playing this stealth. I'm just going around slaughtering everyone. 'Cause I see this, the game doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think in tone-wise it is similar to, and this is what I got from the trailer as well, the sort of impression, the very old game, No One Lives Forever, that is just, it's just a comedy game, and it's kind of how this one feels. I don't think it's trying to be a very serious stealth game at all.
No, it's very irreverent in its tone. Like I think again, evidenced by the sort of playful relationship between Juliana and Colt, even though they're constantly trying to kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still at a stage of that. I don't really get their sort of relationship between the two. It's very weird what's going on. But I don't. There's some design decisions. Like I know things have been made to try and keep FPS up, but things like everybody wears a mask. I feel like I'm fighting robots all the time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether that's intended because, like you said, they had a sort of a morality system before. In this, I suppose you'd get into the idea of, is it immoral if they're just going to come back to life? You know, have you really done anything bad to them if it's all undone the next day? So a morality system probably wouldn't work. And I don't know whether it's intended that you kind of stop seeing these enemies as people. It really just it's like I'm in iRobot. It's even kind of the smooth faces that they've all got. It's weird.
And I think that that's going to have a payoff because the visionaries don't look like that. I guess with the exception of Alexis, who's wearing like his wolf mask, and everyone at his party is wearing the same kind of wolf mask. But I think that it does make a very clear distinction between the named characters and the cannon fodder, like because they all do. I mean, I wasn't even just pulling a word out of thin air. Like they really do look like mannequins. So I feel like there is something going on narratively there. But again, I haven't finished the game, so I don't quite understand all the mysteries of the island yet.
It is funny that these are supposed to be like your best and brightest people that were recruited to kind of live forever and do experiments and stuff, and they're all thick. It's like...
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. But I think the best and brightest people, I think, are just the visionaries, and I think it's possible that the actual other people in the world are literal mannequins and are just there so that people feel like there's actually a city and people to hang out with and people to invite to their parties. But ultimately, I think it's just the 8 evil super geniuses on this island and no one else. And I think that where Colt fits into the story, I think is probably going to be what's most interesting. Then again, I mean, it's possible, granted, with almost everything when it comes to writing and entertainment these days, they could very easily drop the ball on it or just be like, yeah, it doesn't matter, whatever, the loop's broken, congratulations, game over, the end. But I think that I enjoyed the story for Dishonored, and even what I played of Prey, which I didn't finish Prey, but I got probably about 10-15 hours into it, and I liked what I was seeing there. The gameplay didn't really click with me in that game. But I'm hoping that Arkane sticks the landing on it, and I look forward to seeing how the mystery pans out and what the solution to the riddle is, and I really hope they don't J.J. Abrams us.
Well, that's the thing, especially with a game like this. You could come up with a thing where they're all in a board meeting somewhere and someone's got an idea and they're like, that's an amazing idea, and they build the game out and just never thought about how to actually end it. Yeah. And especially as with this, there are things which I think could be fixed, which would be great to fix in a sequel. A lot of this seems like they built the game, and I do think they could have focused more on sort of, everyone uses the word polish, but I more mean sort of the peripheral systems of it. They could be built out more. And so I think that could go well in a sequel. So I do want a sequel to this. I enjoy it enough that if it had a sequel, I'd play it.
Well, I think that the chances of this game getting a sequel seem to be pretty good because I hear that the game's selling quite well, which is a bit of a surprise because it was almost a meme on like first-person shooter Twitter that I guess I'm a part of to an extent. I do play a lot of first-person shooters, but where people were always just like, everyone remember to buy Deathloop because it's going to be us who buy it, and then that's it. It's going to be like every other immersive sim that comes out of companies like Arkane. It gets 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s and 8 out of 10s, and then 6 people buy it, and it ends up, I think, I forget whose tweet it was. It might have been like Dave Oshry from New Blood or something that said, this is exactly the type of game that nobody's going to play, but but is gonna, the only time you're ever gonna hear about it is 5 years from now. It'll be on every video essay where someone's like, here's 5 games that you always should have played but never did. It's like, I was like, yeah, no, there's a fair amount of games like that. Like Vanquish, I keep on telling everybody, play Vanquish, it's great. But yeah. I think though that Deathloop getting a sequel is probably pretty likely. I don't know if narratively it'll make sense, because again, I haven't finished the game yet. But I think what'll be really funny now that Bethesda is owned by Microsoft, that this game being a PlayStation 5 and PC exclusive, the Deathloop 2 will undoubtedly be an Xbox and PC exclusive, because I'm gonna guess it's not gonna come to PlayStation unless Microsoft really does want to make good on that whole, well, if the game has a legacy on an old platform, then we'll consider releasing the game on those platforms as well. And I guess with Deathloop and Ghostwire being the 2 Bethesda games that were the last the last Bethesda games to be PlayStation exclusives, then that might end up being the case. But Deathloop is a timed exclusive also, so Xbox players, if you're looking forward to this, it'll be on Game Pass next September, I guess.
I think this one's done well, because yeah, the 10 out of 10s were still insane. It's got too many issues for me to get even kind of close to that. I'm more going off the core game and the fun I've had rather than sort of what I would class to push it into kind of greatness or Game of the Year kind of territory. Mm-hmm. But for the rest, even just from what I've seen on Twitter and people talking about it on forums and stuff, most people that play it do seem to be having fun. And I've seen a lot of Xbox players, they've been like, why can't I play this game? Everyone says it's great, I want to play this game. So I think sales for it should do okay. For me, I'm still not if it's worth the price. Like, if it's on a sale, I'd definitely buy it. But as it is, I keep coming back to, like, the 4 levels, they're not actually that big. And although each area, it does have kind of several routes into it, it's not like you're expanding out the size of the maps or anything at any point. And I keep coming back to how going into those small maps for literally one objective and then leaving again makes it a bit repetitive for me. So I don't know, maybe I'll feel different when I've completed the story, because I know there's been a lot of games like Max Payne when I've reached the end of it and the ending has made me have better feelings about the rest of the game. So that could be for this, but as it is now, I'm still a bit dubious on the full price of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this does seem like the kind of game that would be well suited to a service like Game Pass or to picking it up on a sale. Personally, I'm having a great time with it, so I think that if you're interested in Deathloop and you either have a PS5, actually I can't really say if you have a PS5, because I've not touched this game with a controller. So for all I know, the controls are super bad. I think the game plays quite well because I'm playing it on a keyboard and mouse. And I did find at least a fix that worked for me for the PC performance issues, because the PC port is not particularly well optimized. I tend to try to shoot for around 100 frames a second on first-person shooters. If I can get it up to 144 or 165, awesome. But 100 is kind of what I like to target. And Deathloop falls apart once it gets to like 61 frames a second, but if you turn on VSync and cap it at 60, I find it's perfectly smooth, and all the screen tearing and stuttering seem to totally go away for me. But other than that, I can't imagine playing this game with a controller because of the precision aiming that I've been getting away with for the most part using a mouse. But at the same time, I don't know if the controller's auto aim in this game is spot on to make it so that you can pull off exactly what I've been pulling off with a mouse using a controller. But I'd say that if you're interested in the game and you're willing to roll the dice on controller support, I would say that it would be worth it to pick it up on PC or PS5 at this point. And if you're iffy on it, wait for a sale, or honestly, if you really want to wait for it to come out on Game Pass, because then it'll effectively be no more than you're already paying for Game Pass every month.
What I'd say is, if you want to check out the game, like obviously by now there's tons and tons of gameplay out there for you to watch at your leisure and stream and everything else. So it's easy to find out sort of if you like the gameplay. But even if you just had initial impressions, there was a trailer early on where they just showed you the missions of killing one of the visionaries, and that's what I went off my purchase decision on, and I basically got exactly what it looks like in that trailer. So if you think that sounds fun, if you just have to kind of a fun shooter that doesn't take itself seriously and you pull off a load of weird stuff with superpowers, then yeah, you'll definitely have fun. And from people have been saying there's about 25 hours to complete everything. I don't know whether I'm on target for that or not. I think you can definitely extend that depending on how much you layer the game and sort of stack all of the objectives together. But if you think that's value for money and you're into this kind of thing, then yeah, that's kind of what you're going off when you're interested in the price. One thing I will comment on, which I didn't experience, but I'm not sure if it's just that I'm not sensitive to it, is that people have been complaining a lot about stuttering on PC. And I watched a video just before we did this, and it seems to be sort of, if you use a mouse every 12th frame or some kind of multiple of your FPS, the camera kind of slows down or speeds up, and so it gives the impression of a stutter even though the performance is actually fine. Now they are coming out with a patch for that, and so they are aware and working on it. Personally, I didn't suffer from it. I don't know whether it's just because I just don't notice. It is quite a minor effect for me, but some people are really sensitive to it. So that might be something to bear in mind and look into if you haven't bought the game yet.
Yeah, as I was saying, though, I am particularly sensitive to that, and I found that while I don't normally like enabling VSync because it does mess with your latency a little bit, and if you have a G-Sync monitor and an NVIDIA card, then you should really never need to put on VSync. But 2 games this year that I've played have been totally fixed by VSync, and that is this game and Dead Space. Though in order to have it not screw up Dead Space, you have to enable it from the GeForce Experience settings. It's a big pain in the ass, but Dead Space looks great when you get it going. Anyways, I guess we will wrap it up there. For Gaming with Geeks, I'm MarcTheCyborg, and this, because he's on the opposite side of where he is on my screen, is Disparu, and we will talk to you guys later.